With the first 3 episodes of Netflix docu-series Harry and Meghan out, we are starting to learn more about the royal family and, of course, Harry and Meghan. Today we are diving into the top 10 biggest reveals Meghan Markle exposed on their Netflix docu-series. Starting off the top 10, one of the most surprising reveals has to be their nicknames for each other. In the docu-series, the Duke and Duchess refer to each other as their first initials, H and M. I love it. It's short and sweet and to the point. Other names that were brought up were Has, which Meghan apparently picked up from the friend who introduced them. And we also learned that the Duchess's friends and family mostly call her Meg. So days before the royal wedding, when she was receiving texts from her hospitalized father, she realized the texts must have been written from someone else, because the texts refer to her as Meghan rather than Meg. So fun fact, Miss Markle's first name is actually Rachel, which funny enough was also her name on the hit TV series Suits. The docu-series doesn't address why she prefers her middle name. Meghan isn't the only one who goes by a name separate from her birth name. The prince's first name isn't Harry, and it's not his son's middle name Harrison either. It's Henry. And now I'm very interested as to why this couple decided to go by names different from their birth names. And I wonder if they're going to talk about it in the second part of the series. Henry and Rachel have a very different ring to it than Harry and Meghan, don't you think? Coming in number 9, another royal detail that's been exposed in the docu-series is their oldest child, Archie's accent. We don't see much of Archie and none of his younger sister Lilibet. As someone who's in the spotlight quite a bit, it's good to know they've managed to keep their children away from all the press and drama. The 3-year-old appears a few times in the first episode. He's seen riding around on a wheeled suitcase pushed by his sweatpants-wearing father, outside visiting chickens and donkeys, and wearing a birthday hat and sitting in a high chair that's covered with a scattering of confetti. He speaks only briefly, and although they moved to LA within the first year of having him, it seems that Archie does still have a British accent. It's cute to see that just because they've moved out of London, they still make sure their children stay in touch with the culture and even speak with the accent. In number 8, Meghan tried to find out more about Prince Harry on the gram. In this day and age, we try to learn more about someone by checking their socials. But when it comes to someone as international as Prince Harry, you'd expect girls to be Googling him to learn more about him, right? Meghan famously said that she didn't Google the prince before their first date. She admits to having done her research on him by lurking on his Instagram account to try to get to know who he is. Luckily for him, his feed at the time was filled with photos of animals in Africa and beautiful scenery. That was enough to convince her to give him a first date. Her reasoning for jumping to his own personal account instead of going to Google was because she wanted to know how he presents himself, rather than what other people have to say about him. Touché, Meg. The 7th reveal we got was how they first met and their official first date story. We find out that Harry and Meg met over Instagram when Harry stumbled upon a video of a mutual friend with Meghan using the dog filter. He ended up reaching out to the friend who let Meghan know the prince had an eye on her and was interested in getting to know her. So shout out to the friend who set them up. We would not be here talking about this royal series if it wasn't for them. The date was held at a members-only club in London, and Meghan was considering ditching him after the first date because he showed up 30 minutes late. Not a great look for Harry, but once he showed up and she saw how embarrassed and apologetic he was, she ended up giving him another chance. Imagine she didn't. Their next day was 2 days later at the same place, and ironically, this time she was 5 minutes late because she had been at Wimbledon that day and needed to shower before they met up. Still not as bad as being 30 minutes late, but it's clear that they really enjoyed each other's presence and didn't let that get in the way of getting to know each other. We also find out that Harry had an extensive list of what he was looking for in a partner, but wouldn't share it, saying that Meghan is the list. I must admit that is a really cute response, but I'm definitely still curious about this list. We've come so far from them meeting on the gram through a friend to spending the rest of their lives together. On to number 6, the royal family reveals ? So far, the couple isn't exactly dishing about other members of the family, which is probably wise if they want to keep up those relationships. But Harry did say there's pressure on the male royals to marry someone who will fit the mold of what a royal wife is expected to be, rather than choose the person they're destined to be with. Now, this may not come as a shock to many because of how important politics are within the royals, but I just can't imagine having to marry someone who's more fit for the family rather than a person you feel fits better into your own personal life. Harry really went against the grain and went searching for someone who he believed would fit into his life. Props to him for choosing different. He mentions that some of the family members didn't feel sympathy for Meghan being hunted by paparazzi because their wives also had to go through that. Though Harry says Meghan's situation was different because of racism towards her. Although a lot of people might not agree with his decision, at the end of the day, it's his life to live and he is allowed to live with the decisions he makes for himself, regardless of what others have to say. Coming in number 5, living with paparazzi. Strangers documenting your every move since birth can definitely get really exhausting, especially if there's bad press and stories coming out that are not completely accurate. This reveal may not come as much of a shocker because of the high status this family has kept for generations, but it is definitely interesting to watch Harry vocalize his dislike for this part of his life that has constantly been relevant in a lot of the things he chooses to do. Being born into the life is so frustrating for so many people. Being chased by strangers who want to document your every move for some extra cash is definitely not for the weak. We find out that royals are told not to react to the cameras, not to feed into the frenzy, and that deals are made. The royals will pose for certain photos in exchange for being left alone for some time. But he states the obvious, not all the photographers live up to that deal, with some continuing to chase the royals down after the agreed upon pictures. There's some footage where young Harry, brother William, and cousins Eugenie and Beatrice are trotted out onto the ski slopes to answer questions and pose endlessly for the same photo over and over. I personally would hate having to stop doing what I'm doing just to pose for a bunch of money-hungry photographers who are watching my every move. That sounds so annoying. Once Meghan comes on the scene, photographers pay her neighbors to put a camera on their house pointed into Meghan's yard. And when Meghan tries to be friendly to the photographers early on, Harry tells her she can't do that because it gives them ammunition to claim that she enjoys the constant attention. What an exhausting life. Being royal is much more than the royal wave and fancy palace. Who would have thought? Speaking of cameras, who would have thought it's not just an on-screen persona? Counting down to the 4th greatest reveal, we find out the royals behave just as formally on-screen as they do when there are no cameras on them. So now I'm wondering, are they out here greeting each other with the royal wave every time they see each other? Meghan recalls a time when Prince William and Duchess Kate had come over and Meghan greeted them with a hug. She was in her own house walking around barefoot with ripped jeans on. Isn't that insane? She didn't necessarily say it was an uncomfortable greeting, but it was definitely insinuated the way she explained the encounter. She learned that the royals don't let their hair down and relax once behind closed doors. I can't imagine being that formal all the time. It just seems like a lot of work, especially when I want to just goof off with my friends. If I was a royal, I know for a fact that would be one of the hardest things for me to adjust to. Just proper clothing on all day, every day, speaking to my family and friends like I'm doing a job interview, could not be me. Meghan also revealed that she never wore color around the royals and opted for muted tones because she wanted to make sure she fit in, while also avoiding wearing the same colors that other members of the family would wear. I mean, regardless, she always looked great, but it's interesting to see that this is something she actively has to think about when getting dressed for family events. The infamous curtsy part of the English culture is an odd thing to think about for people unfamiliar with English traditions. Meghan, being born and raised in America, was the same way until she found out she was supposed to curtsy when she was going to meet the Queen, which she found out was going to happen on her way over there. Imagine you're in the car with your fiance and they casually drop the fact you're about to meet the Queen of England, who is also their grandmother. I'd need at least a week's notice in advance, so props to Meghan for her attempt to curtsy for the Queen. The first impression is the most important, so clearly Meghan had to have done something right, which got the approval of the Queen to marry Prince Harry. In one of the episodes, we see Meghan recalling the whole thing and doing a dramatic remake of her curtsy to the Queen, which she found quite amusing. Harry, on the other hand, was not laughing with her. On to the second biggest reveal, Meghan's family ties. During an interview with Meg's mother, Doria Ragland, we find out that Meghan's father, Thomas, and half-sister Samantha are not as close to them. Samantha is described as someone who barely knows Meg but claims she raised her. Samantha's daughter Ashley is interviewed and refers to Samantha as her biological mother and says she was raised by her grandparents. Meghan admits that they didn't invite Ashley to the wedding despite being close because it would look bad that they were inviting her but snubbing Ashley's mom. Yikes, talk about some family drama. The Duchess also revealed that it was a difficult decision for her to make because she is close to her niece, and she even made the effort to call her in advance to let her know why this decision had to be made. Rough. We get a point of view from her niece Ashley, who feels quite hurt about the whole thing as she recalls the moment. She says that she understood where it was coming from, but to know it was because of her mother that her relationship with her aunt was impacted is really hard to deal with. I'd be her too. Meghan also revealed that her father did not tell her he would not attend their ceremony, and found out from TMZ. That is the worst possible way to find out, and also probably the most humiliating. This family drama is just getting juicier and juicier, and I need to know what's going down in the second part of the series. On to the last, the biggest reveal in the docu-series has to be the royal proposal. The prince took Meghan to a garden near his cottage at Kensington Palace and got down on one knee on top of a blanket with a ton of candles surrounding him. If you want to see the moment, check the docu-series because they provided pictures of the cute and intimate proposal. The moment wasn't a complete surprise for Meghan because she was tipped off by the fact that he popped a bottle of champagne, which led her to call her friend to share the excitement. But it still is a wild thing to find out a whole prince wants to marry you. How adorable. Well, on that note, we have covered the top 10 biggest reveals that we've discovered in Netflix's Harry and Meghan. And if you haven't already started the series, what are you waiting for? Check in and comment your thoughts below on how you feel about the docuseries. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share this video with everyone you know who's tuned in as well. I'll catch you next time on The Rich Life.